Hitting golf balls at a driving range is a great way to improve your game, and it's often the most convenient location for most golfers to get in some much needed practice. But how good a place is it to judge what distances you're hitting the ball? Given golf is a game of precise measurements, if you're deciding which club to play when you get to the golf course based on the distances you're hitting it on the range, it's clearly important to know just how accurate the stated distances on a driving range actually are, as choosing the wrong club for a shot based on getting your yardages wrong can mean the difference between hitting the green and missing it, or worse, ending up in a hazard. So in this video we take a detailed look at the limitations of basing your assessment of how far you hit the ball based on your time at the driving range, and explain why it's the golf balls you use there that cause most of the problems. When it comes to the accuracy of the distances you see at your local driving range, we need to make clear that any inaccuracies that exist aren't there because the range owners are purposefully trying to deceive you. On the contrary, driving ranges are set up to give all the golfers that are hitting there as accurate a measure of the yardage distances they are hitting the golf ball as they possibly can. However, the reality of doing business as a driving range and the size of the space available to hit shots leads to a set of variables which call into question the accuracy of the distance it appears you hit the ball there. And one of the main variables when it comes to hitting shots at the driving range is clearly the golf ball. If you have played golf for any length of time, you'll likely have your own brand and model of golf ball that you're loyal to. You know how it flies and have a pretty good idea of how it rolls and spins in a variety of different scenarios on the course. Unless you're lucky enough to be a member of a professional golf tour or a very posh golf club, however, the range balls you use are going to be different to the ones you play in the course, and this has a big impact on the distances you find yourself hitting the ball at the range. Golf range balls are most commonly comprised of two pieces, a hard cover and a material inside, and they can be a reduced compression as low as 80 or even 70. Premium golf balls such as the Callaway's Chrome Soft X or Titleist Pro V1X are by comparison 4 or even 5 piece, with softer covers and higher compressions which can measure over 100. But what's this got to do with distance? Well, the number of layers and compression a golf ball has affects a large number of things. Spin rates, launch angles, ball speeds, etc. that the same golfer gets from different golf balls will vary, and this can impact both the distance and the flight of different golf shots with different clubs in different ways. To demonstrate this, today's golfer tested a range ball against a TaylorMade TP5X using a launch monitor to assess how the different balls measured up. Not only did they find distance differences when their test pro hit the different golf balls, but they also found different results with different types of clubs. When hitting wedges, for example, the range balls went 16 yards further on average, but when it came to the driver, the TP5X ball was the one that performed better distance-wise, carrying almost 10 yards further on average. The detailed reason behind these differences has all to do with spin rates, launch angles and shot heights, but the simple point to take away from such tests, however, is that to base your distances for the golf course on the accuracy of how far you're hitting the ball at the range is often not the best idea. Another factor to bear in mind also is that range balls also suffer much more wear and tear than the balls you use on the course. They get hit more often, picked up and knocked about by the tractor picking them up, and of course they also get washed over and over. Any driving range regulars will have come across a range ball now and again where it has been used and washed so often that the dimples look to have almost completely worn away. And with that comes funny spins and strange ball flights, which again affects distance. And of course, different driving ranges may have different types of range balls. This, we would repeat, is not because the driving ranges are doing anything wrong, but you have to keep in mind that they are a business, and their business is not to make money off golf balls, but to give you a great venue to practice hitting golf balls. The reason behind the range balls they choose also can be entirely logistical. Many ranges, for example, will actually use balls that are made to make sure you hit the ball shorter, simply because the space they have available for the range is limited, and they clearly don't want lots of golfers knocking balls into adjoining properties or even roads. The type of driving range mat which is used at your local range can also affect the distance you hit the ball there compared to the course. So all in all, when it comes to how accurately the distance you hit the golf ball at the driving range reflects how far you hit it on the course, be aware that the golf ball which is available to you at the range has a big impact. No matter how many driving ranges you have practiced at in your life, you'll have noticed that they all have a different number of hitting bays or stations. The total number of bays has of course a lot to do with the size of the range itself. The more land there is available for the range, the more hitting stations there will be for people to hit some balls and practice their golf game. And this feature of a driving range infrastructure has an effect on the accuracy with which you can precisely measure the distances you're hitting the ball, as there are angles to take into consideration. If, for example, you're hitting at the bay at the far right of the driving range and your ball unfortunately soars 30 yards left to land towards the left-hand side of the range, the distance marker it is closest to can't be an entirely accurate measure of the yardage you have hit the ball. Driving ranges, of course, try and get round this problem by having different sets of distance markers lined up and meant for use by different bays across the range, but there is never going to be one set of markers for every single bay, so it's clear the distance markers can never be relied upon for precise yardages. There are therefore always angles to take into consideration, and angles don't make for exact distance measurements, unfortunately. You also have to take into account any arc that is present in a range when it comes to assessing the distance you hit the ball. Again, in a perfect world, all the driving range bays would all be set up along a straight line, and whilst this would not give an absolutely precise measure of the distances you're hitting the ball, it will still be reasonably good, although never precise. The reality at a lot of driving ranges, however, is that they are set up in some type of arc. And if there is an arc, the degree of that arc is something that has to be taken account when it comes to measuring distance. You only need to think of a standard running track here and how the start positions from different runners for sprint events like the 200 and 400 metres are staggered based on their lane to ensure they are all running exactly the same distance. As I've already mentioned, driving ranges do try and get around this problem by having multiple sets of distance markers lined up as best they can to a number of bays across the arc, but they are not lined up in a straight line to all the bays, and as such the accuracy of the distance measure for different bays in the arc is compromised accordingly. While clearly it's not going to be at 20 to 30 yards out, the distance markers in the driving range cannot be an accurate measure for all the golfers in the range. And as any golfer knows, sometimes only a couple of yards, never mind 5 to 10, can make a massive difference when it comes to getting into trouble in the golf course. While there are clearly limitations in basing your club distances precisely on how far you hit the ball at the driving range, for many golfers it's the only venue available to help you practice and measure how far you hit each club. So, what's the solution? Thankfully, technology has come to the rescue again in recent times, and there are some options now to help golfers to combat the inaccuracies of driving range distances. And this technology comes in the form of rangefinders. There are basically two types of rangefinder, laser and global positioning system, i.e. GPS devices, and both can be used to accurately measure distance. Laser rangefinders are so called for the simple reason that they use a laser to calculate the distance to a specific point. They work similarly to a pair of binoculars, and all you need to do is look through the eyepiece to focus on a target, press a button, and the rangefinder will give you a yardage. So in the driving range, if you're aiming for a specific target in the range, you can simply point and press to determine instantly how far the target is away from your hitting bay, irrespective of the arcs and angles. And the great news is, laser rangefinders are incredibly accurate, with some models accurate to within 1/10 of a yard. GPS rangefinders, by comparison, measure distances based on satellites and will display yardages to specific points in the screen of the device. It's important to bear in mind, though, that GPS devices are not considered as accurate as laser rangefinders. They can be inconsistent at times, which is what we're trying to avoid at the driving range and is something to take into consideration. Neither rangefinder is the perfect option, of course, as you'll still have the problem we have already covered of the effect that the range ball has on the accuracy of the distances at the driving range, but it's something to think about if the range is the only option you have to accurately measure how far you're hitting the ball. If your driving range has a club fitting service, you could also potentially ask if the range provides a service which lets you use their launch monitor to accurately assess your distances. And given they are going to know exactly what type of range balls are being used and how they match up to the ball you use on the course, this could be a good option to get a more precise readout of the distances you hit each club at the driving range. Increasingly also, many driving ranges are beginning to install technology like TopTracer to combat this age-old problem of inaccurate driving range distances. TopTracer works via a series of cameras and tracks the balls hit from any bay on the range until it lands. The software then sends all the distances back to your phone or sometimes screens which are installed in the hitting station you're playing from. This then takes all the guesswork out of the driving range sessions by offering distance measurements to golfers individually. Now, a quick read of many golf forums will bring up lots of golfers talking about the inaccuracies they find when practicing at a driving range with TopTracer technology, but tests by multiple YouTubers seem to suggest that TopTracer is pretty accurate even when put up against top-of-the-line launch monitors. So if you're lucky enough to play at a driving range with this sort of tech available in your hitting bay, it looks like this is a good option for getting an accurate assessment of your hitting distances, especially if you're averaging out the distance results over a number of shots. Just don't forget, even with this though, you need to know how the range ball you're hitting compares to the golf ball you are typically using on the golf course. Thanks for watching. Please like this video if you found it useful, and most importantly, enjoy your golf.